welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your don't you wish I could have finished the last hour of a couple of these games for last time host Madelyn.
And I'm your... Wait, have I been here before? Host Emma.
And thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. It's time for some save data. It's time for some 6 weeks in gaming. It's what have we been playing since late October, early November.
Realistically for me, since late November.
Yeah.
What have I been playing for the last 3 weeks?
For context, right, Emma and I took a nice vacation in November, which you would never know because the podcast continued to come out. We do not miss a week at Talk This.
We did, however, say that we were in the places that we were, so devoted listeners would know that we were recording from.
One of them was in fact a lie, because I just went back and I was re-listening to a little bit of the 6 week podcast to be like, did I finish Triangle Strategy or not? Which last week I was like, did I play it or not? So it's a running joke. Now it's a gag.
Yeah.
And yeah, just lies in that episode. We were not in Amsterdam yet. We were in DC. So you'd think that would mean it's a tighter episode, but there's probably still so much to talk about.
Well, how much have you got?
You know, so I have my 2 little straggler games, the endings of 2 games. I've got my paired travel games, and then I have 2 more.
I've got 4.
Wow, I played more. I didn't even think I'd played that much, and I haven't. Cool. So let's knock it out. So listeners from 6 weeks ago may remember that I came very close to finishing Triangle Strategy and that I had gotten to the final choice of the game, but I did not finish it in time before going on vacation because I was trying so hard to finish Lost Judgment, which I also only sort of finished. So that'll be next. But I did finally finish Triangle Strategy. Unfortunately, because I did not stumble into the golden ending, like the golden child on this show, I did not unlock the vocal version of the title screen, which Emma had really been hoping for me.
Yes.
So now we know that's a special reward for special gamers.
It is.
But it's finally done. This was a game that several times seems like it was going to just fall into obscurity for me, and I'm very proud of myself for actually being able to finish it. I did not think at times that I would, and I did. And it is, in fact, my top Nintendo Switch game of 2023. And then I played about 40 hours of it. But that was not that challenging of a competition, given that my second and third place games I had played 2 hours. Spoilers.
For our year-end podcast, Madelyn.
Okay, sorry. Super boring. If you're tracking my gaming throughout the year, you'll notice very little Nintendo Switch other than Triangle Strategy, because I couldn't start anything else on the Switch because I felt so bad about Triangle Strategy. Sorry, you're right. Spoilers for a couple weeks from now. You may remember that I chose Benedict, which out of character.
Very out of character.
But chose Benedict's ending to pair up with S. Frost at the end. Spoilers for one ending of Triangle Strategy here. Jump forward a couple minutes. I feel like the Benedict ending was a little harsh on all-powerful King Serenoa.
Yeah?
Yeah. In this ending, right, we were able to defeat, I don't even remember what these places are freaking called anymore, Hyzant, and, free the Roselle, give salt to everybody. And you're telling me that there wasn't income inequality before?
Serenoa stoked that rampant capitalism.
I just said, it wasn't even capitalism exactly. He said everybody can have salt.
Serenoa believes in that trickle-down economics.
I guess. But you can't make me believe that people are so much poorer than they were before. I don't know. Maybe inflation's really bad. What do I know about the economics of this fake country? And at least we don't have, pink hair minority slaves anymore. Everybody gets to have salt now.
True. That is a net positive.
I just felt like, the arc of history bends towards justice or whatever. I felt like Serenoa didn't get enough credit for, forcibly bending the arc a little bit.
Sure.
That's all.
Sure.
This is pretty harsh. Especially given that I feel like I got a more charitable ending when I failed to find, I didn't really, but it was kinder to me when I failed to find the item I needed to get through chapter 12, and they were like, he was a righteous man and people remembered him for a while and then he faded into history. It's like, that was kinder.
Yeah, I think I said this last time, but if I hadn't gotten the golden ending, I think I would have picked Federica because, like, my Cyrano at least was not into being king. He was just here to be a wife guy, and that's who he was. So
I just felt like the Federica one was too goody two shoes. I'm sorry.
Cyrano is the guy who's like, what my wife wants. This is my wife. Listen. That was my Cyrano.
Look, my Cyrano was very much that way too. I just felt like I was worried about that choice because it felt too goody two shoes, and I was like, this feels like the good choice, and that seems like it might backfire. There's no way that choice ends up well.
Well, anything other than Roland's choice seemed okay. So.
Meanwhile, I'm not happy with Roland's like ending appearance.
Roland, to me, just felt like the character was a little confused. In general. Like, his proposal of, like, whatever, let's just leave the Rosalde, or we're not doing it. It felt, like, very out of character for him. And then it feels like the epilogue for your thing is, like, back in character for him, from my understanding. So it really feels like they're just like, we need someone to represent this choice. I guess Roland will do it.
I guess I just felt like Roland had a nice exit in the Benedict ending, in that he said, you know, he still like loved and respected Sarah Noah or whatever, but he can't be part of this, and just leaves. And I feel like letting him walk off into the sunset with some of his dignity intact is better than him randomly turning up as a monk to lead a peasant rebellion, like with one of the Hyzant guys. That was what was weird about it to me.
That was
Hyzant
weird.
Guy being there
because he's helping the Roselle village that's struggling, but then also the Hyzant guy is there, which also feels like, I feel like there's some explanation here that's missing. There's a whole other game worth of stuff happening here.
Maybe in rectangle strategy.
Maybe.
So ultimately, as I said in the last 6-week episode, I would recommend Triangle Strategy, although I will say, I feel like we've had a lot of podcast games recently that have been sort of turn-based strategy type stuff. And while I credit Triangle Strategy with being at the front of this kind of wave of resurgence of this genre over the past few years, I think probably I am aware of more options in this space than I was when I started this game way back earlier this year, or whenever I started it. And so, you know, I would recommend, if you're interested in Triangle Strategy, maybe do a Google and see, like, is this the one? Because it's a lot of story for the story to feel sort of at the end. That's my take. But I did not get the vocal version of the title screen. I did get Punchy Granny. Which Emma did not get.
I did not get her.
I didn't really use her, but she was there. Punchy Granny. So check that one off the list. Glad to not have Triangle Strategy as the albatross in my gaming library anymore. I can make room for something else and let my Nintendo Switch play something that's not this.
Continue.
Oh, the other straggler. All right. Yeah. So you'll also remember that I pushed really, really hard to finish the story of Lost to Judgment for the 6-week episode at the beginning of November, but I was unable to finish the school stories side quests kind of culmination in time because of the stupid biker gang, which I could not stay up late enough to do or force myself to care enough about to do. So I did, and again, like, spoilers here for maybe a little bit of the main plot of Lost Judgment, but for the culmination of the sub-stories arc, which is really the main plot, let's be honest. So yeah, I did get to finally learn the professor's identity. I had not gotten ahead of it, really. I got there, like, as we were at the end, but I hadn't gotten ahead of the professor being Itokura.
Yeah.
So kudos to them for that, as someone who whined nonstop in Judgment 1 about knowing where the story was going, like 3 steps ahead of Yagami. I didn't figure this one out.
It is somewhat, like, I thought about it in hindsight, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense from, like, a storytelling perspective, but
yeah,
I also was like, I was like, oh yeah, as they were figuring it out, as well.
And I agree with you that I felt like this, look, I love it when the whole gang comes together.
Heck yeah. Gotta love the gang coming together.
This is why Yakuza 4 and Yakuza 5 are so high up in my rankings, and Yakuza 6 is, like, at the bottom. Because 4 and 5 are all about the gang coming together at the end. So I love that, we got to call in all the students at the end. I only wish we could have, I know it would have been too many people, but if there could have been, like, a one-line cameo for all of the other clubs, that would have been neat, too. If the gaming voice could have been there for half a second or whatever. But yeah, we discovered that. We also discovered that she was kind of under the thumb of the Keihin gang. Judgment is really trying so hard to make the Keihin gang happen.
They're trying really hard to make it happen. They're failing. They're not doing well. The Keihin gang is not making themselves happen.
It's the Keihin gang. I'm like, who cares? They were, like, annoying guys in Judgment 1. It's so... especially when, like, none of the people that you actually befriended from the first Judgment come back. Which is whatever. It's fine. They're Kamurocho people. I get it. But it's like, why the Keihin gang? Why not the couple at the cafe that I, like, got together? Or whatever. Why Koga? And why do we have to keep pretending that Koga is, like, this criminal mastermind genius? Like, I understand maybe the Keihin gang is, like, Yagami's real ultimate enemy, but, like, what? Come on.
I mean, I see the need for, like, or why they thought, like, having, like, a low level sort of thing for side quests and sub stories that end up that feels connected, like there's, like, this thing happening here, but isn't on the same scale as, like, the main plot stuff. But yeah, I think the Keihin gang was just ruined in the first game when your friend from the restaurant would text you, like, every 15 minutes, like, the Keihin gang, Yagami, shut up. Yeah. I don't care.
They just aren't interesting enough. That's all. They aren't interesting enough as characters. I'm just like, man, what are they doing here? But it's fine. I get the purpose of them here. I cannot latch onto them. And I do hope that we'll talk about Judgment cameos again later. I would love for Amasawa and Itokura, regardless of the future of this particular RGG series, to get to appear again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that they could very easily be sub-story characters, or be employees at whatever form of Ichiban Senbei.
Yeah, they can work for his. They can be hired on his Animal Crossing island.
Yes, that would be excellent. Summer job. But you've talked, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this a little bit. But you've talked a bit about how you feel like this one captures the themes of the game, or perhaps the intended or attempted potential themes of the game in a more effective way than the actual main story. Which I imagine has to do with, like, the theme of seeking revenge, and then because of that revenge, getting trapped in a pool of sin. Yeah. Basically. And in this, there's room for redemption.
Yeah, it is very, like, it's a similar sort of story beat, just on a more, like, high school level. But Itakura gets in over her head with a gang that's been helping her do all these things to the students who hurt her in the past, essentially. And what I felt they did effective is, like, Yagami going there and being like, okay, like, what's happening? Do you want this? If you tell me you don't want this, I can help you. Right? Like, it felt like he was more mature in handling this situation than he was the main story, I guess. And it felt more satisfying to actually be able to help her, I guess, with the things that she was going through. And obviously it's at a much smaller scale than the main story, but I still feel like a lot of that just wasn't there at the end of Lost Judgment.
I mean, it helps that this is a story that's at a scale that it can all tie up neatly at the end.
Sure.
And everyone can forgive each other. And that's a little harder when you're a serial killer.
True.
Yeah. So I'll give them that. But yes, after a several week, almost a month hiatus, I also closed the book on Lost Judgment. Sort of. I guess I have to go back and play the Kaito Files, probably.
I like the Kaito Files. I liked everything except the very end of the Kaito Files.
I didn't mean that to convey reluctance. I just mean it to convey, I'm so glad that I will have more content after, like, April to hold me over until the next big release.
Yeah. All right, speaking of hangers-on, it's time for everyone's favorite segment, the Cold Steel 4 Report.
No! Emma, are you going to finish it before the end of the year?
Okay, no. But I am confident. I am confident I'll finish it before Infinite Wealth comes out. Pretty easily.
You know the meme where the guy's like pulling off his headphones and he looks sad?
No.
I'll find it and I'll show it to you.
All right.
Headphone guy. I mean, he's like,
no.
Ugh.
I don't know.
Anyway, go on.
But I think I'll finish it before the end of January. I feel pretty confident right now. I didn't finish a whole chapter this time because I haven't had 6 weeks to play it. But I did, and there's like a lot, in the last few chapters, there's been like a lot of side stuff to do. Which, like, this one especially, there's like some meaty side stuff that I'm like, if I didn't do this, like, how would the story... Like, there's like 2 towns that would just be wiped off the map if I hadn't done these side quests. And it's like, like, would it just do it? Would it just wipe the towns off the map? Or would something else happen to fix it if I didn't come in and fix it? I'm very curious. I did notice this time, as I was doing, there's bonding events during each chapter, so I was going through the bonding events. I can now hang out with the girls again because I've missed their special memories once, so they're no longer special memories. They're just normal memories.
Sure. Feel that.
But it actually, in some cases, it remembered, like, what order I did the bonding events in, which I hadn't noticed it doing before, but maybe it had. But it would be like, oh, hey again, Reen. I helped you in the last bonding event, too. Which was fun. Also, big report. You may remember me talking a couple of times in this Cold Steel 4 report about how much I wish that the characters would just, like, punch their dads. And I feel like that would solve a lot of Erebonia's problems.
Wow, big week for dad games here.
Yeah.
Talk this.
So, Ash making a inspired play to try and take over Altina's spot as my favorite child, in his bonding event this time, does, in fact, just sock his father figure in the face.
Wow.
It's like he's a light father figure, right? Like, they have a shared past, they're discussing it in this, he's kind of a bad guy, and Ash is just like, okay, like, thanks for giving me to my mom, thanks for saving me, also you suck. It was very satisfying. I hooted and I hollered. He is still my second favorite child, though. It's very hard to unseat Altina. I mean, I love all my children equally, but also there is a hierarchy. Anyway, I got through all the side stuff. I got through the bonding events. We're back in Crossspell. We're putting on a grand performance to distract security so that we can break in and take down the barriers that are keeping us from our next rivalry, where Reen will once again suck up the powers from another mech wielder. We'll have to see. Will they die, or will Reen save them with the power of hugs? It's 50-50 so far.
Sometimes the power of hugs fails. Is that what you're saying?
No, they declined the power of hugs. The second time.
I see.
Yes. They were like, no thank you. I will in fact die instead.
Nice.
I'm feeling good. We're winding down. We're getting to the end. We're whittling down the things to do. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see how it ends. and then I'll put the series down for like at least 6 months before heading into Reverie.
I think that's good.
I've seen people who don't like Cold Steel 4 do like Reverie, so like I am looking forward to playing that. But check in next time. Hopefully I'll be really close to done by next time.
Well, by next time it will be late January, so you better be done.
Close to done. I said by the end of January.
Okay. I sent you the headphone meme.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. I'll look at it later.
Listeners know what I'm talking about. It's the guy, and he's pulling off his headset. He's like, rah.
Anyway, that's the Cold Steel 4 report. Treasure it while you can.
I know, I'll miss it. Well, quick one for me. I talked for so long at the beginning. Quick one, and then I'll throw it back to you. Emma and I traveled a lot over the past 6 weeks, particularly some quite long plane rides, one of which it was better that we mostly stayed awake for. So I played at least a little bit of FTL and a little bit of Vampire Survivors, which are really the ideal travel game pairing, I would say. FTL is good for when you want to feel bad about yourself, and Vampire Survivors is good for when you want to feel good about yourself.
There you go.
If you've been playing for a while. Listeners will remember that at the beginning, I struggled with Vampire Survivors. We could not break through like minute 12, and then the whole world cracks open. However, if you are playing these on a budget airline, you are going to feel a little self-conscious that the person next to you, who you don't know, might be sort of annoyed or confused by what's going on your screen. I wish I saw people playing games on planes more often.
Yeah.
It would make me feel a little bit less self-conscious about it. Vampire Survivors in particular, one of my runs, I feel like I got a lot of like very kind of like flashy weapons, and the guy next to me was like mostly sort of sleeping but also not, and there was also Emma, but that doesn't, who cares.
Yeah.
Emma
you could have angled it towards me more if you'd wanted to.
I guess, I don't know, Emma was too busy watching whatever British reality TV.
Yeah, I don't remember what I was watching.
I think it's about makeup, right? But yeah, I felt a little embarrassed. I was like, this is a dumb looking game. I look dumb for playing this dumb looking game.
No, Vampire Survivors is intellectual peaks.
It's a good game. I don't disavow Vampire Survivors. I just felt a little embarrassed that someone might look over. I really want to try the co-op version of it, but of course we did not bring like a controller with us.
We can do it over the holidays. Test it out.
You're so right. I didn't even think of that. That's a good idea. I don't know how you attach, I don't know anything about controllers on Macs, though.
We'll have to figure it out.
Gonna have to learn. Anyway, I have still not gotten actually to the end of FTL, unfortunately, or unlocked any new ships, or made any real meaningful progress to speak of. But I do keep believing that someday I will win.
All right. Speaking of travel games, sort of.
Oh, yeah.
Fun fact for any listeners who may or may not still have their 3DS.
Not fun fact, essential fact.
Essential fact for any listeners who may or may not have their 3DS, or probably DS or Game Boy or any equivalent thing. If you travel to Europe, or really probably any other country, you do not, to charge your 3DS, you need not just the plug-in adapter for the different types of wall things. What are those called?
Those are called outlets.
Outlets? No, the outlets, what's the thing that goes into the outlet? The prongs?
Prongs, the adapter, yeah.
Yeah, but not adapter, because you also need a voltage adapter. Adapter is too broad of a term. So you need not just the thing that can make it plug into the wall, but you need something that will change the voltage so that it can actually charge, as I found out in Munich.
And Google suggests that you might totally fry your 3DS if you plug it into the wrong voltage. This did not happen to Emma, but be careful.
It did not. I didn't turn it on, which might be part of it, so maybe I was lucky. But it does charge on airlines. Fun fact.
Yes, you're fine to plug it in on a plane.
Yeah. Or at least the airport you
Thanks, Tap.
Yeah.
This podcast brought to you.
This was brought to you by Tap, an okay flight. But anyway, I brought my 3DS to play Radiant Historia, Perfect Chronology. And I did play probably like 5-6 hours of it while on the trip, and I've played about 5-6 hours of it since I've been on the trip. We've talked about this on the show before, but in case you don't remember, in Radiant Historia, you play Stock. He's given a mysterious white chronicle by his boss, Heiss, and soon discovers that it's a way to traverse between different timelines, of which there's like 2 main ones, and then there's like a bunch of possible ones that you go through the extra content on this version as well. And you sometimes have to swap back and forth between them to get information necessary to continue to progress on each route. And so there's a war going on, so you're trying to fight the war, you're trying to save your friends, you're trying to save the world from turning into a desert, all this stuff. It's very exciting. It's fun. I like it. I like the combat system. You like move the enemies around on a grid by like pushing them around with attacks. I think the characters are fun. I like that, like, whenever someone asks Stock a question or like tries to get a rise out of him, it's just like he just like dead stares them. Just doesn't say anything. Nice. Which like feels like a boring trait, but it's very funny to me for some reason. I can see the humor.
That's what happens to me after every podcast joke, so I get it.
Yeah. He just looks at them, long pause until they continue speaking, essentially. Which I think is a good trait for him. It feels right. But even this far in, I don't feel like I've really gotten into the plot. I feel like on one side I've really gotten to the hook now, and on the other side I'm like not quite to the hook, but there's like interesting conspiracy things going on that side too. So I'm excited to see where it goes from here. And whether Stock can save the world from turning into sand.
One can only hope.
One can only hope.
Well, are we ready for Like a Dragon Gaiden?
Sure. Is that your last one?
No.
Okay.
One more.
Okay.
Yes, not surprising. This Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, came out while Emma and I were in Europe. So I, of course, started playing it immediately upon returning to New York after Thanksgiving. Managed to avoid basically all spoilers. And I will keep it spoiler-free here. There will probably be spoilers for Yakuza 6 and Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon, because plot elements of those games are relevant to even the basic setup of this game. But I will, for Emma's sake, avoid too much in the way of specific story spoilers.
Yes,
for Gaiden
itself. The English dub patch just came out on like Thursday night, so I have not gotten to Gaiden yet because I'm a filthy dub player.
I have watched some clips of the dub, and well, I don't think that it is objectively that bad. I think it is hard for me to have an objective opinion because it's just wrong for other voices to come out of these characters at this point for me.
I really think that's the fundamental problem that a lot of longtime Yakuza players have with the dub. Rather than it being like bad, it's just like they're just so used to what they're used to. Yeah.
Did see an interesting different translation for one of them, where I do think I prefer the Japanese moment, but that's okay. No big deal. So yeah, Like a Dragon, Gaiden. So our little side story for what was Kiryu, aka Joryu. Which, by the way, I learned after playing the game when I was like looking at reactions online that Joryu means purified dragon. Which is really funny.
That's very good.
Just really, really funny. And will not continue to be his code name moving forward. By the way. I thought this light spoiler there. Like, someone at the end was like, Choryu's a little too on the nose. So we're going to give you something else.
Okay.
Yes. So Kiryu, between faking his death for mostly inexplicable reasons at the end of 6, and appearing as a nameless bodyguard in a big fight in 7, has been working as a secret agent, sort of, more or less, in this game. And so you're working with the shady government guys, shady government agency who control the world, more or less. I didn't really follow exactly their motivations for being involved in the plot of this game too much, but that's okay. Kiryu's around, so no big deal. What I liked about this game is that it is obviously made by people who are in my camp of, man, what the heck was Yakuza 6? Like, what was that? Like, why was that a good idea? Kind of energy. There's several moments that I just feel like are right out of my mouth of like hilarity. So that has me, I know that you maybe continue to have mixed feelings about the co-protagonist 8 thing.
I have been more interested since they've revealed what's going on with Kiryu in 8.
Yeah.
I think the initial reveal that just showed both of them, I was like, oh, come on. Yeah. But they're clearly at least thinking about it. So we'll see how I feel after I play this, I guess.
It's interesting to me. I wonder at what point in the past 7 years they decided, no, that was kind of a bad ending for Kiryu. I'll be curious to see if I can tell more of that from 8. Because this one, Gaiden definitely. I'm gonna switch. I don't pronounce this in a consistent way. Have a fun time throughout this podcast being like, how many times do I call it Gaiden and how many times do I call it Gaiden? And I don't know which one is right.
Gaiden, probably, and I know that, but I'm still gonna switch back and forth. Okay.
So I enjoyed that this game definitely seems to be in the camp of like, we're gonna move on from that kind of situation. There's a lot of emotions in this game. We're gonna feel our feelings in Like a Dragon Gaiden, which, excellent. We love that. We love our manly ex-gang member men feeling their feelings. Mm-hmm. Good stuff. We also love a good moment where everybody tears off your shirt. Mm-hmm. Get some of that?
Sure.
My boys? So in terms of the actual gameplay itself, right, you have 2 combat styles in this. There's like agent style where you have a bunch of gadgets, and there's Yakuza style where you fight like you have fought in the past 6 games. And because I had just played Lost Judgment, it didn't feel quite so much as like a homecoming to the real-time combat because I just played a big game that was that. Mm-hmm. But I really did not use agent style pretty much at all. I'm too set in my ways of the square, 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 triangle, triangle mm-hmm. combo. And also, I really felt like while it is pretty easy to rack up a lot of money in this game once you get to a certain point, I didn't feel like the agent style got powerful enough until you had upgraded it a lot of the way. And even then, there were still portions of it that I was like, I was struggling to use. I'm just a baby gamer. I don't know how to do fancy things. All I would do with agent style is throw out the little zip line thing and throw people around. I was not very good at using the blow-up cigarette. So, the agent style, combat style seemed fun-ish, and I had fun playing around with it when I was, like, way OP at the end of the game, and I was just like, let's give myself a little challenge. But I didn't find it, like, so compelling that I totally changed my play style. I did like the group Coliseum battle structure in this game. It's a different sort of like group battle than we've seen before. Some of it was still a little inexplicable. I felt like I developed a strategy for it that I'm not sure is like actually maps on to how the game works. In that I felt like I have to beat the little guys and then I can move on to the big guys. And if I go to the big guys first, their health like doesn't go down. And maybe that was just in my brain. I don't really understand how it worked, but I had a fun time doing it. I did not engage with the real life hostesses beyond I'm sorry, Emma, you are forced to do one.
Yeah, you've told me that. I'm dreading it.
It was fine. It was like uncanny. That one was not that gross. And it's like, usually I do some of the like chatting with the hostess sub stories because I like the little dialogue options, make people love me kind of things. But it was just too uncanny for me for them to be like real human beings on the screen. I need them to be pixels.
Yeah.
So yeah. You asked me a little bit about the Judgment Boys.
Yeah.
How much do you want to know?
I was curious if you felt like it spoiled you for the Kaito files at all.
If it did, I would not know what it had spoiled.
Okay. Then probably not.
I believe, well, I guess this must take place after the Kaito files. Because the point where I meet them is definitely... No,
it actually,
doesn't. Sorry,
it doesn't.
I got confused. It doesn't. It takes place in 2019.
That's true. I got hung up on the fact that Yakuza games usually take place in the year they come out, but this one does not.
Yeah.
So, that's true. It wouldn't have.
So no spoilers. It is just, it's Kaito and Higashi are in Yokohama for a case.
Isn't Higashi busy with his booming arcade business?
No. He was just scoping out the arcades in Yokohama.
That's probably it, yeah.
They also, you after you finish their sub-story, they become Coliseum fighters for you.
Oh, fun.
Higashi was one of the only ones that I attempted, like, playing as in the Coliseum. He was okay, because he has a knife. But here's a hot tip for you. Don't play as anyone else in the Coliseum. They are so bad. There's no one who is...
as good as Joe
Ryu. It's not worth it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good to know.
Maybe you can fight some of the bronze fights at the very beginning to, like, get them, like, a big experience boost to start, but it's just not worth it.
Okay.
They are really bad.
Okay.
Even Higashi was pretty bad.
Okay.
So I felt vindicated in not buying the Legendary Fighter Pack because it just would have been sad for, like, Majima to be bad.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe he at least could have spun around and gone, wahoo, though, so.
Yes. I still have hopes for Infinite Wealth. A little bit of wahoo would be great. And finally, and like, not spoilery, but closest to spoilery of this. So this is a game that, based on some of the reviews, I was expecting like non-stop cameos from past like Yakuza characters. And I would not say it's that. There are definitely some characters that appear and like people who it's like pleasant to run into and hints of people from Kiryu's past and that kind of thing. It seems like 8 is going to more than deliver on the bringing back everyone who's ever been in these games front.
Yeah.
Bring back Tanamura, you cowards. He's chief of police now. Bring back Shinada. I actually think that there's an outside chance that Shinada is like just chilling in Hawaii, also in the buff. I wouldn't resist that. I wouldn't resist that opportunity to have that cameo if it were me, but whatever. But there is like definitely more of a preoccupation from Kiryu on elements of his past than has really been a big part of recent games, particularly 6. 6 had so little interest in Kiryu's past, I think, and that's why I have problems with it. But there was definitely like a lot more kind of dwelling on like regret and past people he had respect for and that sort of thing. And I felt like it particularly spent a lot of time on Yakuza 1, which, okay, makes sense. A lot of very formative events in Yakuza 1. But also, and I guess it's because it's in Sotenburi, but like a lot of Yakuza 2 callbacks, which I felt like was weird. I was like, I mean, I guess we did like Kiwami 2, and so you're feeling like everyone has played this, and you don't want to do callbacks to Yakuza 3, because who the F has played Yakuza 3?
Yeah.
And like wants to be reminded of it. But I did feel like, yeah, like a lot of like strange amount of callbacks to Yakuza 2 characters in a way I was like, that was cool, but I wasn't expecting. That said, this whole game does hang on you caring about the orphanage kids who you do kind of have to have played 3, 4, or 5 to care about. Mm-hmm. So get the remastered ones. You have to. It's interesting. I'm really interested in how you're gonna react to this. as someone who is perhaps a little bit less steeped in the lore.
I'm excited.
I'm very interested.
I'm not going into it totally fresh,
I know.
Right? I've heard you talk about all of these games. So there's a little bit there that I can latch on to.
I know, but you yourself have not dug for worms in the front yard of the Okinawa house.
I have not. You're right.
So that doesn't come up. There's no real callback to that. Also a tiny bit more goofiness sometimes in the main story, like a little bit of the side quest energy bleeding into the main story at occasional points.
Well, he is like a super secret agent, so
yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah. And Pocket Circuit, which I played about 2/3 of, and then I got stuck, and I don't really think I actually ever really understood how Pocket Circuit works.
Good to know.
So look forward to more discussion of this once Emma plays it. I'm fascinated. I'm be fascinated by your response to this.
Excited.
Overall, I think it was it did not overstay its welcome. Like not so much meat there, but a good. I'm jazzed for 8. A good setup for 8.
I'm excited.
Back to you.
All right. I played all of In Stars in Time this 6 weeks. I had played the demo for this at one of the Steam Next Fests and really liked it, so I got it on Switch for the full release. Essentially in this, you're Sifrin, a member of like a hero's party, essentially, that is now on like the very last leg of their quest. There's a king that's been freezing a country in time, and you're going to go defeat the king and restore time for the country, everybody who has been like frozen by his powers. So you and your party are getting ready. You do your last day of preparations. You have a nice little sleepover. You go to the castle, or the house. I'm sorry, the house where he's, capital H house, where he's holed himself up. You're going around. Things are going well. You're the trap checker, right? So you're going around checking for traps. You don't find anything. You say, Mira, it's okay. There's no traps. And then a giant rock falls on Sifrin's head. Oops. And they find themselves back in time before their final day of preparations in the town outside the house, able to retry their mistakes to try to get to the king, essentially. So Sifrin has found themselves able to loop through time, typically upon their death, although you start to notice as things go on that sometimes it's not upon their death, and perhaps that is pertinent to what is happening. Essentially you keep getting stuck at different points until you make your way to the king, and then, then the time loop totally ends. I really, really liked this game. I thought it was really cleverly put together, both in its like design and its writing for the time loop thing. There are little things like you can, if you've seen a conversation before, you can zone out through it, but perhaps your zoning out causes things to be different in that conversation that you then miss.
Interesting.
I noticed this. There's a point near the end where you've got like 3 actual members of the party and then like a kid that's tagging along with you. And the first time you get to like a door blocked by something, the kid steals your knife and like tries to cut it. And if you go through it again, if you zone out, the kid continues to steal your knife. But if you don't zone out, you're like, they're gonna steal my knife. I better stop them before they do that. And this happens at other points. And as the thing goes on, Sifrin's thoughts and reactions to things become different as well, even whether they're zoning out or not, which changes the way that different characters respond to you. And whether you're zoning out or not zoning out may cause Sifrin to be seen as suspicious by their party members, that maybe something's going on with him. And so that can affect how things play out. And it's just interesting, like, as the time loop goes on, different things that were, like, funny, goofy at the start to take on different like contexts as you get more backstory and more explanation for why Siffrin is the way that they are, which is very avoidant mostly, which being stuck in a time loop is not great for avoidant personalities, I think. Maybe based on this game at least. I don't really want to go too much into it and spoil it, but just it felt very cleverly written to lead you into wrong conclusions and then reveal the right ones, and to like set things set up early. There's like a little thing where you can get like a kid in town to draw a picture of you and your friends. And at a certain point, previously, like when you get it, you're like, it's me and my friends, right? And then at a certain point that turns into, it's me and my allies. Which is in fact a relevant thing that affected Siffrin's thought process that isn't actually remarked upon until later in the game as to why they've changed their wording like that. So it's just clever, I think. So I really recommend it. My advice is be cavalier with your loops, because I think if you're not too cavalier with it, it can get tedious. I saw that like complaint a couple of times, and I just was like, you just hit a tier, just grab a tier and loop to where you need to be. It's not that difficult. So that's my one hot tip for playing in Stars in Time, is to loop cavalierly whenever you need to. But also don't be afraid to go back through the whole house again, because sometimes that can be fun too. Just good game. Great game. I like games that have story that feel like it bleeds outside of it. Like there's stuff happening that isn't directly relevant to the narrative itself, which is a theme, again, for the next game that I'll talk about too.
Do you think that by 2025, all games will be required to have a time loop?
See, you say that. I don't know what you're talking about with that. I don't think it's a new trend.
I just feel like it's gotten more and more prominent.
I guess.
Maybe
what is your example?
I don't know. I just feel that, like, there's this. We're going to talk about Alan Wake. Deathloop was big. I don't know. I just feel like time loops are becoming, like, are very in. You can't tell me time loops aren't very in.
I guess. I think you might be, like, I don't think a roguelike is the same as a time loop game all the time.
Sure. I will say, though, that I think more roguelikes are being presented with a time loop justification.
Again, like what? You have to back these up with examples, Madelyn.
I'm sorry, it's hard when it's like something that's just like thrust upon me. Returnal is a time loop.
One.
Right. I really feel like we've talked about more on the show. I'm sorry, I don't have evidence off the top of my head. My brain is mush. But there are more, I promise.
You've got to back it up, Madelyn.
I can't back it up. It's just a gut feeling that time loops are in.
I don't think it's that in. I think that there are a few games, and that I perhaps talk about a lot of them because I like time loops.
Okay.
I don't know.
Outer Wilds, Deathloop, 12 minutes. There are others.
Okay, next game, Val. Next game.
I just did a quick Google. I almost said Majora's Mask. Obviously, that's not recent.
That's not recent.
Slay the Princess.
That's not really a time loop.
It's right here in time loop games. Quick Good Boyfriend identified it as a time loop game.
I would argue with that.
Fair enough. Anyway, my final game is I'm finally digging into the backlog, and I started The Last of Us 2.
Woo! Everybody! Hoot and holla! Whoa!
Remains to be seen if it's a weird time politically to be playing this game. I haven't really encountered anything that makes me think that yet, but
I don't think you've gotten to the part that's talking about, so
we'll find out. Anyway, yeah, I'm about like 3.5, 4 hours in, so like the big plot event has happened.
Yeah. And
we're headed to Seattle. Or I guess we're like in Seattle now, actually, technically. Yeah, how spoilery. This game is not that old, but also like, it's impossible to avoid the spoiler, right?
Yeah. It's our modern era's Final Fantasy VII spoiler.
Do you think that's true? That's such a funny, like, that's a good, but, like, also that's funny.
It is funny, right? But it kind of is.
Yeah. What do you think that was in, like, Shakespeare?
Shakespeare? I don't know do you think they cared about spoilers in Shakespearean times?
I'm gonna Google
Shakespeare
it after this.
always, the tragedies are always like, this is how it ends. Anyway, enjoy.
I know. Do you think people were like, dang it? Like, Hamlet dies.
What do you mean? Shakespeare, shut up. You're spoiling your own play.
Oh my God. So yeah, the Final Fantasy VII spoiler. That's really funny. Of course, now we feel weird about that. Who knows if that's still a spoiler? Soon that will become a spoiler again.
True.
And you know what? Probably soon it will become a spoiler again here when the TV show comes out. So It really is.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Anyway, yeah. So, okay, spoilers for The Last of Us 2. Early game spoilers for The Last of Us 2. Spoilers you've probably already absorbed. Although, against all odds, Clickbait Boyfriend did not know, like, how the first one ended, which I thought everyone knew. So, I don't know. I haven't talked to them about, like, how he feels about spoilers about this game while I'm playing it while he's in Spain. We'll find out. He'll probably see some of me playing it when he's back. Anyway, it's bolder than I expected. That moment.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
It's brutal in violence, but it's also brutal in how little the game explains what's going on. I think that I have internalized some beyond this motivation spoilers about it, just from being online, that I sort of assumed would be at the very least hinted at much more strongly before the murder. And they're not really. There's like maybe like a tiny little mention that they're looking for someone.
Yeah.
So I completely understand why people had, I mean, I don't completely understand because some of the reactions are scary, but I understand why people had strong reactions to it because, yeah, I mean, it really does all come pretty out of nowhere.
I mean, it was sort of like a perfect brew of toxicity, not just around the murder, capital letters, the murder, but around Abby as a character too. Like when they revealed her, there was just like rampant transphobia stuff. There was then the game leaked entirely contextless, and people got upset. It was just like a perfect storm of everything that gamers are awful about. And I think that really enhanced why this happened so much.
Yeah. But I do give them not like story. I don't know. I'll be interested to see like where we continue to go, but I give them credit for, something, I mean, really very bold in the first 2 hours of this, because I thought that there would be some build up to it, but there's like not really.
It's fun to look at after the fact. You can see you can see in Abby's expression, like when Joel introduces himself.
Oh, no, I'm seeing all of that because I know what's coming for sure and might have noticed it. But even that, I'm feeling like I was like that. Okay, yes. I don't mean to say there's no groundwork laid. Yeah. I just mean to say I expected that I would get some kind of motivation groundwork and not just like shady groundwork. Which, good for them for letting that be a mystery for a little bit. I do feel like the gameplay so far has mostly felt like tutorial. And like this game is not that long. Right? Wasn't that the other whiny thing? What?
It is too long, was the whiny not that whiny, I think it's a legit criticism. Is too long. It's like, I think it took me like 30 hours.
Oh, okay, never mind. I feel like I had remembered the opposite criticism, but no, okay. It's too long. Okay, never mind.
I think some family members who may have played it perhaps did it in shorter time than that, but it took me like 30 hours.
Yes. Well, I do still feel like, oh, I'm like still in the tutorial. It's still, which is good because I'm not that good at this game. So it's fine that like I did get murdered a bunch of times before I realized I was in an area where I was meant to sneak past instead of kill. Oops. My bad. We were talking about this the other day in the context of the TV show. I like the decision to jump forward 4 years. It doesn't really feel like there is honestly very much story to tell in those 4 years. So why would you bother? Right? It says enough that like Joel and Ellie are not quite as close anymore. And maybe we'll, hopefully get to unravel that a little over time. But I think trusting the player to like fill in some of the dots there is neat. However, it has made it's taken me some time to like latch on to the character of Dina at all. She is suddenly very important to Ellie with not a lot of context. And especially given that like we get this sort of unfortunate like, they get punished for having sex more or less by Joel getting murdered, right? That juxtaposition of that. It's like, I wish that like this character wasn't introduced as like she cheated on her boyfriend maybe with you.
No,
maybe they were already broken up, right? Like
didn't.
I don't know.
I would you might be already doing this, but I would recommend reading Ellie's journal. I
am reading Ellie's journal. I still feel like I'm just feeling like, like to me this character feels like someone that we met yesterday. And like she's coming on this like highly personal revenge trip with Ellie. That's what I'm like having. I'm taking the time to get used to. This is a character that I have no connection to as the player, and it's taken me some time to be like, well, like what is Ellie's connection to her? Because we also didn't meet her in 1 at all. I don't think she's a bad character. I'm just like, to me, it's like you're a stranger to me. Like, why are you here? I have highly personal revenge to get.
Yeah.
And so like, what are you doing? And like, also you're like the girlfriend now, and I don't know who you are.
I guess I don't remember having that problem, but it's interesting to hear your perspective on it.
Here's where the problem really comes from for me. The first time I had to make a health kit, Dina gave me the dirtiest rag I have ever seen to make it.
She knows that's what you need.
That's not wife material.
She's an expert. You need the dirtiest rag ever to make your health kit.
There was a great moment, too, where you have to use a health kit for the first time as Abby, and she's like, oh no, my shoulder. And then you do the health kit, and it's like on your wrist. I was thinking back to our health kit episode.
That's how you fix your shoulder. You tie it on your wrist.
It was just really funny that like she said so obviously, like it didn't have to be her shoulder, it could have been her wrist, it didn't like have to be, but she said very obviously like, oh, my shoulder, like ow, I hurt my shoulder, and then immediately bandages up her wrist. It was like incredible, iconic. I will say it was challenging for me to go from game about a dad who is maybe too good of a dad, whose fault might be trying to be too good of a dad, to start The Last of Us when I was like, this is a bad dad. Game from about a guy who maybe cares too much about the dreams and wishes of his children, as opposed to...
That's true. That's a good one. I feel like that's the better... I think you could argue that caring too much about the dreams and hopes of your children is perhaps just another way of maybe being a bad dad.
Yes.
But I see the contrast. I see this. Yes.
Dad who wants to get out of the way of his children, perhaps too much.
Yeah.
Remove himself from the narrative of his children's lives, perhaps too much, versus dad who will not do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm excited to hear your thoughts as you get further in.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna keep moving through it. I don't think that I will. Aurora will be disappointed to hear this, but I don't think that I'm gonna finish it before Wednesday. I will play some more, but I don't think that I'm going to finish it before the holiday PlayStation 5 hiatus.
Yes, I don't think so
and
either.
Will it be superseded by having 2 weeks to play Trine 5 when Click Click Boyfriend is here in January.
Well, she's got to understand. Trine 5.
Trine 5! Trine 5!
This is what we've been waiting for years, all of us.
Yes! Okay, that's my 6 weeks. I didn't play any podcast games. Last thing, I didn't play any podcast games because I played Sea of Stars way early because of the vacation, so I'm limping to the finish, but I played so many this year. I'll have to do the tally for the end of the month.
All right. Despite ourselves, this is somehow still a long one because we just can't shut up.
This?
We just can't shut up on these ones.
And I always at the beginning, too, feel like, oh, man, we're going pretty fast. And then I get to the latest Yakuza game, and I'm like, let me talk to you for half an hour.
Well, okay, last one. I have played all of Alan Wake 2. Yay!
Woo!
Yay, Alan's awoken! Or has he?
What? Oh.
So yes, Alan Wake 2, the long-awaited follow-up to Alan Wake, the Remedy's Avengers, if you will. Featuring, new characters from Alan Wake, characters from Control, and legally distinct characters from Max Payne and Quantum Break, for which they don't own the IP.
Legally distinct.
I love some legally distinct Shawn Ashmore.
I love legal distinction.
You can probably get by. I've only played the first Alan Wake and Control. You can get by without having played Max Payne or Quantum Break. Those are very, side references. But, man, what a game. What a good game. If the hostesses in Yakuza Gaiden were live action like their live action in Alan Wake 2, then it would be good.
I'll trust you on that one.
I think I heard this or read this somewhere, so I might be, building off someone else's idea, but I can't remember where, which very appropriate for Alan Wake 2, honestly. But it's very much a game that shows how games can hold, every other type of media inside of it. So you got the game part. You've got a musical theatrical performance. You've got a book. You've got an audiobook version of that book. You've got a radio show. You've got a short film. You've got multiple live musical performances. You have photographs. There's a play that's referenced. So on and so forth. It's really just because it's about, art. And the effects of art, and the dangers of art, perhaps. The dangers of making art, perhaps. And so it makes sense that it's just this big container that's holding, all of these different forms of art inside of it, which I think is very cool. Gameplay itself is fine. It's never been Remedy's strong suit. It's awkwardly between The Last of Us and Resident Evil, in that it feels like I should be able to be fast like Resident Evil, but there's stuff like the weapon switching is a little bit more cumbersome, and the healing items take time to use, which sometimes feels unfair, during the big mob sections, for example. I mostly played on normal, but whenever I was doing any backtracking, I would usually switch to story just to avoid using up all of my resources on exploring the area.
Makes sense.
So I almost don't really want to talk about the story, but there's dual protagonists. You play the first 5 chapters in order, and the last 2 chapters in order, and every other chapter you can switch between Alan and Saga whenever you want, essentially. So I did a chapter of Saga's, 3 chapters of Alan's, another chapter of Saga's, the rest of Alan's, and then the rest of Saga's, essentially, or something like that. But it's fun being able to switch between them. And, like, Remedy has just built out this world so effectively. I think Control did a whole lot for them there, like mixing Control and Alan Wake together, with Alan Wake just being, like, one thing that happens in this whole sea of strange occurrences that happen across the world. That really, like, it just imbues Alan Wake 2 with, like, this more, like, there's a wide amount of stuff going on, right? Like, there's this whole thing that is probably going to get mentioned in one of the DLC episodes or another game down the line, but there's, like, this whole thing around Saga's parentage that there's a lot of little pieces that you can piece together and go, oh, ha, ha, but it doesn't really come up in this game because it's not actually relevant to the narrative that's happening, like the central conflict between Alan and Saga. And it's like, it's nice, like I just said, within Stars in Time, which these have a lot of, like, they feel similar in some ways. There's a lot of crossover there. Sifra and Alan, the Venn diagram is very close to a circle.
Nice.
I think Sifrin would be a better writer than Alan. That's my personal opinion. But I like it when a world feels, when there's, like, a story and it feels like there's a world, but it doesn't get too bogged down in all those details, right? It's focused on what's important to the main thrust of the story and the characters that are your main characters, for example. Alan Wake is a bad writer, but Alan Wake games are not badly written games. I also appreciated the, like, different way that Alan's a bad writer in this, in that he's just totally given, like, the most obvious one is he's totally given up on, like, subjects in his sentences. He just goes, like, had to do it. Saw the thing. Like, he uses the subject once and then, like, period, short fragment sentence.
Nice.
Which is very appropriate for, like, a man who has just been writing nonstop for 13 years or something. Yeah. He has just, like, lost all patience with his own writing. He's just like, put the plot down, Alan. Do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a clever game with lots of really cool stuff in it. That's also just goofy at the same time. Like, just clearly made by a bunch of people who had fun. There's some bugs. I hit a pretty bad one after, like, the latest update where I couldn't pick up inventory upgrades for Saga anymore, which did make the little last stretch of the game a little bit, like,
challenging.
I can't pick anything up. But, you know, they're updating it and fixing it. There aren't any, like, awful frame rate drops like Control had, so it's a very pretty game. A very pretty game that runs well. Like, I had it on not performance mode, on quality mode. And I didn't notice any particular issues. And it has to be pretty, because I think that something like Alan Wake 2 is a testament to how photorealism can be used effectively in games. The fact that you can still have art direction while using photorealism. The way that they can, like, smoothly move between their game models and the frequent live action footage that they use is just really clever and wouldn't be able to be done with anything but this technology and this style. Yeah, like, I could just go on about Alan Wake 2, but we can talk about it more maybe on the year-end podcast, and I'll be playing it again for the final draft, New Game Plus mode. So, yeah. If you don't play Alan Wake 2, you should at least go listen to the new Poets of the Fall, Old Gods of Asgard stuff, and all their chapter songs that were made for the game, because they all rule. So...
I'm sorry, that whenever we talk about Alan Wake, all I can think about is Click Like Boyfriend playing the Control DLC and being like, who's this guy?
I think that's the right attitude to have towards Alan Wake.
Yeah.
He's just, who's this guy?
Who's this guy? Well, listeners, do you have any tips on how we can get these things back under like an hour 10?
Every other show is fine. It's just these 6 weeks ones.
We just keep talking.
We just can't shut up.
Have you played Alan Wake 2? Have you played Gaiden? Can you give us some more examples of time loop games? I swear there are tons of them. I promise there's tons of them. I feel like I am in a time loop. If you have thoughts on any of this, anything that we played, anything else, hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat, and read our blog, featuring long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend and Split Screen. I really want to get the blog going again in 2024. I say every year, but this year
I have some year-end blogs coming.
Oh, so boy.
Look forward to it.
Look forward to it indeed. But most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you should subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, maybe TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you can find podcasts. Subscribe to Talk This. Next week, usually these days I have some idea, but I don't remember it all.
It's YS, which we still have to look up how to say.
Yep.
And I believe the new one is Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, but I will double check that.
Yes, I'm pretty sure about that. That sounds familiar. So look forward to that. And then in 2 weeks, it's our end of year podcast. Woo! Our PlayStation Wrapped's coming your way.
Very exciting.
And then it'll be my side quest to start the year. Emma, do you have a sign off? I won't belabor it.
This week, I hope you... Wait, have I said this before?